meeting of the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authorities being called to order at 9:01 a.m. March 10. Raymond, would you go ahead and do roll call and then read into the record the language for the online meeting, please?
Yes, ma'am. Raymond Tace, Executive Director of the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority. Roll call, Joyce Wilson.
Here.
Jim Smith.
Here.
Luis Rosas.
Here.
Yeah.
Patrick Byrne.
Where are you going tomorrow?
Here.
Nicholas Lamantia. And Marco Zaragoza. Okay, we're showing Mr. Lamantia and Mr. Zaragoza as not present. Robert, if you'll keep an eye out for those folks, because we're pretty close. We've only got 4 members, which is a quorum for now. I'll read into the record the COVID-19 notices as well. Pursuant to the suspension of certain open meetings laws by Governor Greg Abbott, this CRRMA board meeting is being held via video and telephone conference. In accordance with various federal, state, and local orders, the public may participate in the meeting using the video link or telephone conference information found on the CRRMA's website and on the posted agenda. This meeting is also being recorded and will be made available on the CRRMA's website as soon as possible after conclusion of the meeting. During the meeting, each board member making a motion or a second should state who made each. The chair will then call for those in favor, against, or abstaining. The public is invited to participate in the meeting just as with all CRMA meetings. If you are interested in asking a question or providing a comment, please submit a comment in the chat function of the video component or ask to be recognized by phone. If there are no questions from the board, we are ready to begin with the chair reading item 2 into the record.
All right, adoption of the minutes from the February 10th, 2021 board meeting. Do we have any discussion or changes? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
This Jim, motion to approve.
I have a motion.
Luis, second.
Luis, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Item 3, discussion and action on election of a treasurer for the Mobility Authority to replace Mr. Norwich, whose term has expired, and I think he's being replaced. Am I correct?
Yes, ma'am. The council has appointed an individual by the name of Dorothy Bird, and we're working on getting her administrative activities completed so she can join us.
Are there any of the newer board members who would be interested in stepping in as treasurer for the organization? I'll take volunteers.
You know, Ms. Wilson, we are missing a couple of folks. Would you like to delete this item? I can bring it back for the next board meeting when we have a full.
Do we need, can someone sign on behalf of the treasurer for now?
Well, we won't have any actions necessary of a treasurer in this coming month. I had spoken with Robert about that, so I think we're okay if we skip 1 month.
Okay, why don't we just table it and see if anyone else joins us?
Sure.
Okay. And then maybe by the end, we'll just strong arm somebody to do it. So number 4, presentation, discussion, and action on a board resolution related to the CRRMA's recent procurement for Fabens Airport Deceleration Lane Improvement Projects, which authorizes A, the award of the project and execution of construction contract with the lowest responsible bidder, B, execution of amendment to work authorization number 1 with Hewitt Zollers Inc. for construction phase services, and C, execution of an amendment to work authorization number 36 with Adkins North America for construction oversight services. And if you all could go through this quickly, please, so that we can get as much of these transactions accomplished before we lose a quorum.
Yes, ma'am. I'll go through it very quickly. I've got a PowerPoint that's going to run through all this. This is included, excuse me, this is included in your backup, should you want to spend some more time on it. We're dealing with the Fabens Airport Deceleration Lane Improvements Project. This is a smaller project, but it is part of the VRF program that we are involved in with the County of El Paso. And we also have a representative from the county, Mr. Sal Alonso, available should you have any questions. So these are the items we're going to talk about today. The project purpose is actually to assist in improving the roadway in and out of the Fabens Airport, which is owned and operated by the County of El Paso. This is the project location to orient you. This is I-10, and this is Fabens Road. The project location is right here at this intersection that leads into the Fabens Airport. And this is what we're doing. We are adding a deceleration lane. So when you're heading in from I-10, you'll be able to pull off into the decel lane. We're also adding some additional signing and striping on the other side. So when you're headed up from Fabens Road and you'd be able to take a left into the airport as well. So this is what this looks like. The role of the county is, of course, as owner, and we manage the design, and we have issued the procurement, and now we're recommending to move forward to the next step. We provided 2 advertisements, and we opened the bids in February last month, and we are proposing today to award the project and authorize the execution of the agreement, which is included in your backup, and we believe we could begin construction as early as April of next month. Here's some details on the construction. We think it'll take about 3 months to complete. And these are the letting results. You'll note that the engineer's probable cost of construction we anticipated to be just under $300,000. The bids were very favorable. The low bid came in at $144,979.24. We've since met with the low bidder, confirmed his line items in the bid, and confirmed that they would be able to do the work for that amount. And so because of that, you see the motion before you that I'm requesting. And this would be item 4A, seeking a motion to approve a board resolution to authorize the executive director to take the following actions, specifically selecting Allied Paving Company as the lowest responsible bidder and execute a construction contract with the lowest responsible bidder, which again is Allied Paving Company. So that's what I have for you. Subject to your questions, I would recommend approval of 4A. However, if you'd like, Ms. Wilson, I can go through the rest of the items.
You should go through all 3 of them so we can do it in one motion.
Certainly. So that's 4A. That's the construction contractor. And as you know, when we have projects like this, we also bring back the engineer, the designer of record. In this case, that's Hewitt Zollers. So we've asked them through amendment, which is item 4B, to serve as the designer of record during the construction phase as well. So what you see before you is 4B then is an amendment to that work authorization for $27,576.53. I'd recommend approval of that item as well. And then lastly, of course, we use our general engineering consultant team, which is Atkins, to provide oversight services. In this case, they'll be providing construction engineering, inspection, and testing services in the amount of $114,032.03, and that's under item 4C. So subject to your questions, I would recommend approval of all items, all 3 items.
This is Jim. So moved to approve.
This is Pat, second.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and second. Are there any questions or discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Motion passes. So we move to item 5. Discussion and action on board resolution authorizing the execution of the following instruments as they relate to the East Lake Phase 1 roadway improvement project. A, third amendment to the interlocal agreement, VRF project development agreement with El Paso County. And B, amendment to work authorization number 27.6 with Atkins North America, Inc.
Okay, on this one, you'll see that we're asking for two actions to be taken. The first one relates to an amendment to the county interlocal. As you know, in order for us to access the county funds, we execute interlocal agreements with the County of El Paso for any of the comprehensive mobility plan projects, of which this is one, East Lake Boulevard Phase 1 specifically. This one adds $270,000 to the construction amount necessary for the completion of this project. So that's what item 5A is. And let me speak a little bit about 5B and we'll roll it back together. So 5B then is an amendment to the Atkins work authorization, wherein they serve as as our general engineering consultant on this project as well. What you may recall with the Atkins work authorization, that one, the original agreement was for $2.4 million to provide those oversight services. However, roughly around the midpoint of the project, we actually backed out $200,000 from their agreement. We thought we were doing really well. We thought that we'd be able to spare those funds, and in fact, actually, what really drove that is that there was an additional owner initiated change order on the contractor side, meaning the County of El Paso added street lights and illumination to the tune of about $600,000 that were originally unanticipated. So we took out of the contingency $600,000 for those additional lights. And we funded that through the contingency plus a reduction in the amount of fees that were available to Atkins. Well, through the progress of the project, a couple of things got held up and slowed down. So it turns out we needed to add $270,000 back to the original interlocal agreement. And from that $200,000 that we pulled out of the Atkins work authorization, we're rolling back $71,245.18. That can get a little confusing, so I'm open to any questions that you have, but ultimately what we're asking for under 5A is an amendment to the interlocal with the county, whereby the county would provide $270,000 additionally to the project, and under 5B, we would amend the work authorization with Atkins to add approximately $71,000 to their work authorization. And I can walk through in a little more detail under the change order PowerPoint that's later in the agenda, each of the different change orders, so you can see how they started to add up and how we ended up in this position. But subject to your questions, I would recommend approval of this. And I would also mention that the county has reviewed and approved this, and we have a representative from the county online should you have any questions.
And so they don't have any issues or concerns with this?
No, ma'am. They are supportive.
Very good. Do we have any questions from the board about this? If not, could I entertain a motion?
Ms. Louise, so moved.
Okay. We have a motion.
This Jim, I second.
We have a motion and second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, thank you. Let's see. So we're on 6 now, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I just want to make sure I didn't skip anything. Discussion and action on a board resolution authorizing the execution of a project development agreement for design and construction of the Weiler Aerial Tramway project with the Texas Park and Wildlife Department.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen on this one as well. I'll again try to go through this pretty quickly to make sure we can keep quorum. This deals again is read into the record with Weiler. We've brought this before, I believe, the planning committee, and we've mentioned it to the board before. We have been working with Texas Parks and Wildlife to assist in their efforts to bring the Weiler Tramway back online. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Here's some history, and this is part of the board backup, and it will be added to the online agenda after this meeting. So I'll skip through some of this. The point of these slides really is to give you the background on the tramway and its operations. So back in '59, the tramway was built in order to service the KTSM transmission tower on Ranger Peak. In the next year in '60, it was open to the public and operated all the way through '86 as a private affair. In '97, the tramway was dedicated to Texas Parks and Wildlife Department. And then in 2001, it reopened to the public. Now, through that whole period, of course, and through today, the tramway continues to service the transmission tower, which is obviously its main intent. But back in 2018, you may recall that the tramway was shut down after Texas Parks received a report that, quote, said the tram had reached the end of its useful life. In last legislative session, our state delegation passed a bill that allowed for this particular RMA to be a participant in the development of this tramway. So they basically expanded the authority of this particular RMA to allow us to work with Parks on the aerial tram. In that same legislative session, that the legislature provided $5 million to Parks for use on the Weiler aerial tramway. So in that same year, Parks began a feasibility study to identify the various options for the facility. In 20, Parks completed the feasibility study. They solicited input and determined that option 3 of that feasibility study, which we'll touch on here in a moment, would be the one that the public is most interested in. And in 20, Parks also began a more detailed study on what details would be needed for an improved tramway. And then today in 21, we've now reached negotiated an agreement with Parks whereby the RMA will assist in the tram design and the construction activities. And that's what you see as your backup for this item number 6. So I wanted to touch briefly on the feasibility study. And I'm breezing through this, but if you have any questions, please feel free to stop me. This is the report. You'll notice that it was developed by Atkins and this is a coincidence, but it's going to help us in the long run. Parks has an on-call agreement with Atkins, which is of course also our general engineering consultant, and they completed this feasibility study that was issued last year. This is the facility. To orient you, this is Alabama, this roadway right here from the east side, obviously looking west. From Alabama, you take McKinley to head up to the base station, which is located right here. From the base station, the southern section of the base station is where you board the tram and you head up to Weiler Aerial Tram, and this is the route. That's going to become important when I show you a couple of these next slides, and we can come back to it. So the completed feasibility study I mentioned earlier actually identified 4 options for the tram. Option 1 would be, in effect, to replace the exact same tram in the exact same place. Second option was to replace it in the exact same place, but add some additional improvements. For example, there would be some additional trails, there would be an expansion of the parking facility and that sort of thing. Option 3 is to replace the tram in a new location in the same base, but with those additional improvements like parking facility upgrades and trails and that sort of thing. And then option 4 was a new tram in a new location, which basically would have proposed moving the tramway up into McElligan Canyon. Well, option 3 is the option that Parks, after soliciting input, has decided on. So to orient you, this is the base station. Now this time we're looking north. North is heading to the top of the page, so it's a little bit slightly turned. But as I mentioned, the base station where you board the tram is on this southern section of the base, and in this diagram it shows you the southern section, which is where you get on the tramway currently and you ride all the way to Ranger Peak. What option 3 is proposing is that you move the tramway boarding section to the north side of that same facility up here, and then you head to a new peak. So you would basically have a new tram from a new location, but then you would also have the improved parking facility and you would have additional trails and that sort of thing. So that's why this option has a new tram in a new location, plus the improvements identified in the other options as well. Okay, so here we go. So key points, we touched on some of those. There's an observation deck that would move north of Ranger Peak. New vehicles, new base station, everything you see there. The expanded parking facility would allow for food trucks, day use shelters, and that sort of thing. The estimated cost, now of course this is very early, very preliminary estimated numbers. They're looking at between 24 and 28 million. That's total project cost. Of course, through Parks is doing a programming effort right now, and of course through our work on the design phase, we'll be able to narrow that number down and come up with a real number. But right now, that is the best estimate that we've got. So the agreement then, which is included in your backup, shows that from the $5 million that were provided by the legislature in the last session, 4.6 million would be provided to the RMA, and we would use those funds for the development of the design, the final design for option 3. And we would obviously work very closely with Parks and try to get that done. Once that design is done, any funds left over from that 4.6 million, we would propose, and working with Parks, of course, we would propose to begin construction of phases of the ultimate project. I would mention too that a major partner in this effort has been the El Paso Community Foundation, who is looking toward developing an outreach program to provide some funding for this program as well. So in the interim, while we are doing the design, Parks and of course the RMA and El Paso Community Foundation will be speaking with other stakeholders to see if there are some funding opportunities available to us as well, so that we can continue the construction once we get the design plans complete. So that's what you see there. So this is the motion that we're seeking on item number 6, and that is a motion to approve a board resolution to authorize the executive director to execute a project development agreement for design and construction of the Weiler Aerial Tramway project with the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department. Subject to your questions, I would recommend approval of this item.
This is Pat, so moved.
Can I get a second?
Luis, second.
Okay, we have a motion and second. Any discussion or questions? I do want to say that this is an exciting project, and I'm really glad that the RMA is going to be involved in this. I know it's something that's really important to the community, and it'll be a great addition bringing this back. So thanks for your efforts in terms of getting the legislative authority and coordinating everything with the appropriate state agencies. If there are no further comments, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, motion passes. Great. All right, let me find my agenda here again. I got kicked out. Okay, so now we're on number 7, which is discussion and action on board resolutions to authorize the execution of amendment to an interlocal procurement and placement of bus shelters with El Paso County for the Canatia Sidewalk and Shelter Project.
Yes, ma'am. So on this item, we discussed this with a PowerPoint at the last board meeting, so I'll go through this rather quickly. This is an amendment to an interlocal with the County of El Paso, whereby the county is actually providing $500,000 in additional funds for the expansion of this effort, which is to place bus shelters throughout the community to service the El Paso County transit system. So that's adding $500,000 to the project. So subject to your questions, I would recommend approval of this item as well.
This Jim, so move.
We have a motion.
Luis, second.
So we have a motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, that passes as well. So do we still just have 4 on right now for a quorum?
Yes, ma'am. I only see 4.
Okay. Is Mr. Rojas the secretary? Who's the secretary?
Yes, Ms. Rosas.
Okay. And his reappointment hasn't occurred or hasn't been determined. Is that correct?
That's correct. Not yet. He's in holdover position.
Okay. I'm a little anxious about not having a treasurer in case something comes up. I'm wondering if I guess, Patrick, would you be open to serving as treasurer? I don't know if you are interested in doing so. I don't want to like strong arm you.
No, yeah, I was gonna say I'll do it, but I'm sorry. I was at the airport. Had some background noise. I'd be happy to do it.
Okay, well, if you're open to doing that, I'd really appreciate it. I mean, we have a lot of newer board members, but I think it's good to get those who are kind of going into their second year of their term more engaged in leadership roles. And so if There are no objections. I'd like to make the motion to appoint Mr. Burns as our treasurer.
So moved.
This is Jim, I second.
Okay, so we do have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you,
Anyone
Pat.
opposed? And then we'll see what happens with Luis over the next months or so. I assume as long as there's no action on the city one way or the other, he just stands in a holding and can continue to serve, right?
That's correct.
And function as our secretary, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So the only other business we have are 8 and 9. I'm going to try to stay on, so let's get through 8. I sent a note to the other group telling them I might be a few minutes late. And then if we lose a quorum, can you still do the presentation on number 9 for those who are left?
We could.
There's no action, right? You could
Correct.
still continue to go through it for those who want to stay on.
Yes, ma'am. In fact, item 9A, we've been presenting those as backup reports, and I
Okay,
just
so we don't even need to do it.
right. But 9B, I think I'll mention a little something, but it'll take 2 seconds. But if we could get to item 8, I would like to go through that because I am required by resolution to do that one.
All right, so let's go through item 8. I'll read it. Presentation and discussion on change orders recently approved by the executive director for the 2013 County Comprehensive Mobility Plan.
Okay, I'll be brief on this one. This is, as you know, this we do each month when there are change orders that have been approved by myself in the prior month. In this last month, we had 2 change orders that were approved, and they deal with East Lake Boulevard. So I'm going through these, but as you'll see, these are the various change orders that have been approved to date for East Lake Boulevard. You'll see number 6 there. Which is the big one, $639,000 that was requested by the county to add traffic signal on Paseo del Este. That's really obviously a very large change order that was unanticipated, and that really impacted the project budget, which is what resulted in the other item that we discussed earlier. So that has a lot to do with that item. So you'll see some other ones in here. There's a push button for another 111,000. Anyhow, that's helpful on the other item that we discussed. So what you see today, though, yesterday I executed change orders number 30 and number 32. 30 is some hike and bike improvements that was requested by the municipal utility district out there, the MUD. That was required because they eventually take over maintenance of those, the hike and bike and those facilities. So they requested, and the county approved $65,000 for some hike and bike improvements. And then number 32 was requested by the county to replace some illumination that's out there with some improved poles. So that's another $10,900. So both of these have been approved and do not require any action. I will mention, I will follow up with an email on number 30 because the resolution that authorizes me to execute these change orders requires me to provide written notice to you all once a change order is approved over 50,000. So I'll do that later today. But that's really it for this item. So no action.
Okay, and then the last item that you wanted to flag quickly on number 9.
Yeah. So with number 9, the CMP updates, those are provided as backup. So you have those. If you have any questions, feel free to give me a call. 9B, though, that's the Borderland Expressway project. Just very briefly, the coalition continues to meet that we've discussed several times in the past. Jim Smith serves as its chair. He may have some comments for you, but just very briefly, at the last coalition meeting, we added Representative Molinar, who's a new addition to the city council, to that coalition because he is from the Northeast. And after that coalition meeting, myself, Robert Studer, and Mr. Smith met with Molinar personally, or I should say over Teams, briefed him on the RMA, got him up to speed on what we're doing, what we've done, our history, that sort of thing, but then also focused in on the Borderland Expressway project and also the City of El Paso's Transportation Reinvestment Zone number 3, which is a potential funding source for the Borderland Expressway project. That's just very briefly, that's an update on that project. Mr. Smith, I'm not sure if you had any comments.
This is Jim. It was a pleasure getting Representative Molinar read in. He's very, very interested in everything that's going on, and looks like he will be a good supporter of both the RMA and the Borderland Expressway. Very, very good session.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anything else to go over before we adjourn?
No, ma'am, that's all I have for you all.
All right, thank you, everyone. Sorry to kind of rush through the meeting today. I'm glad we were able to keep quorum, though. And
No, I
Patrick,
am
thank
too.
you
Thank
for
you all
agreeing to
for
serve as
accommodating.
treasurer. I really appreciate it.
Oh,
So
I'm
with
happy to
that-
do it. I was going to send you a message after, but when I got out of the airport, but yeah, I'm happy to do it. No problem.
No, I really appreciate it. So if there's no further business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
So moved.
I have a motion.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, thank you so much. Have a great day.
Hi, Joyce.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
You
Aye.
too.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. I've got 9:31 for the record, Robert.